Hi, my name is Helen. I'm here because I want to do my response to the Bryan Stars Never Shout Never interview number 2, because everybody seems to be voicing their opinion on it, and I just kind of want to get the chance to voice mine. And I know it's probably like old news now, it's a week old, but I just never really get the chance to speak up, so yeah, so here we go. Like, I was on Twitter and I see all this stuff about the Bryan Stars Never Shout Never interview, and you know, I see a bunch of stuff like, oh, Christopher Drew's such an asshole, so I was curious and I wanted to check it out. The video starts off, even though a lot of you who are watching this probably have already seen it, it starts off with Bryan's first interview with Christopher Drew, and they're dancing, they're laughing, they're having a good time. Christopher's jumping out of a bus window. It's all crazy and happy and funny like Bryan Stars normal interviews. And then you get to the second interview and Bryan was telling about how he drove 7 hours and he brought his friend who's a huge fan of Never Shout Never. A huge fan of Christopher Drew, and you know, it was a big deal for them, and they have a guy from the New York Times there, and Chris just comes off as really cold. Like, I was never really a fan of Never Shout Never. Like, I heard a couple of their songs, I never really was into them, and just seeing this was just like, oh my god. And the first video, I mean, it was only 2 years, but just imagine, like, that's enough time to change. You know, like 2 years ago, I had a completely different group of friends, and now, see, a lot can change in 2 years, and, you know, they're talking about, oh, why don't you start asking the real questions, and if you've done an interview with Bryan before and you've seen his interviews, you should know that Bryan's being crazy and funny and saying stupid shit, which I love. You know, I'm the kind of person who wants to get to know the artists as who they are as people. Not hearing the same old, oh, who's your inspiration, what's your music about, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm really sick of hearing that, so I like getting to know them, you know, who they are as people, because they are just people, like everyone else. And then there's the one guy with the mustache who kind of grabs Bryan's paper, he looks through them, he's like, nope, nope, he throws his papers, shuffles them around, and Bryan is just like, oh, okay, he's kind of flustered. And Christopher's also pointing out, like, oh, why are you basing this interview more towards me? This is a 3-piece band. When really the one guy answered more questions than Christopher Drew did, the guy in the hat with the mustache. Yeah, he answered more questions than Christopher did, and the other guy was just sitting there, just saying nothing. And even when Bryan did ask a question towards him, he was just like, what? Oh, yeah. So, and when Bryan brought up his friend Nate with the glasses that Christopher Drew gave him, you know, you just kind of see him go, oh, this is cool, whatever. And, yeah, and another thing that really bugged me is how Christopher was talking about killing ego, when to me he came off as a bit egocentric himself. So, yeah, you know, just kind of really hypocritical. And one of the things that really, like, irritated me is how at the end of the video Christopher is just like, okay, let's wrap it up, bye everyone, this is for you guys, not for him. And that just was one of the cruelest things I've ever heard. Not only was it cruel, it was straight up rude. You know, it's God, and you can tell in Bryan's voice, and he's just like, oh, well, that was Never Shout Never, and he seemed really upset, and he was really hurt, and Bryan was really looking forward to this, And Christopher Drew also mentioned that, you know, Bryan was spreading lies about the band breaking up, and, you know, I saw the Rest in Peace Never Shout Never interview, or video, and Bryan was pretty much saying the quotes that Christopher said in his alternative press interview about how he doubted that the band's gonna make it and how he hates tour life and all that stuff. He was just quoting everything that he said. He never really said that they were actually breaking up, but he did also say that, you know, he asked for your guys' opinion. And another thing about the bullshit questions is that a lot of Bryan's questions are fan-based. So if you're calling Bryan's questions bullshit, you're pretty much calling your fans bullshit. Way to go. And he also mentions that Bryan's making a mockery of all these bands. When you see every other interview, they're all laughing, they're all having a good time. It's craziness, you know. I've seen the Asking Alexandria one, the Bless the Fall ones, the Falling in Reverse, Escape the Fate ones. All those are just them having a good time, not really caring. And Bryan does ask serious questions. You know, in Escape the Fate, number 3, he talks about Max leaving, and Falling in Reverse, they talk about when Ronnie got kicked out of Escape the Fate. And another thing is that I noticed on Twitter, the band's actually backed Bryan up on this. Kellen Quinn from Sleeping with Sirens said something, "Wow, Christopher Drew, too bad your ego doesn't match your music. Sorry about that, Bryan." And Bo Boken from Bless the Fall also said something. It's just something along the lines of Christopher Drew is a dick, and he didn't really say that. I know he said, it's like, I don't even remember his name, so. See, even the bands love Bryan Stars, and I think Bryan is probably the greatest interviewer. He's so funny, he's original, he's just, you know, he's just a ray of sunshine. And when I saw that, and I saw him crying, all I just wanted to do was go through the video, go through the thing and hug him. So, yeah, and personally, it doesn't take a lot for me to not like a person, but it really takes a lot for me to not respect them. And trust me, Christopher Drew, you lost any respect I had for you. Well, that's all I gotta say, so see ya.